Airbnb. You know the problems in this city. There was legislation to try to prevent Airbnb, of course, from, first of all, taking every available apartment and renting it out. That seems to be working to some degree. But this issue of parties out of control, and we've heard too many of these stories, people renting an Airbnb and then basically end up trashing a place.
Disturbing not just the neighbors, but the neighborhood entirely.
Airbnb is obviously aware of this and has been for a while, and now there's finally a change, it would seem, in terms of some of the restrictions if you want to rent on Airbnb. Mac McNamara is a senior communications manager for Airbnb. He's on the line. Hi, Matt. Hi, Matt.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so listen, what's the deal now in terms of actual policy change at Airbnb on this?
Yeah, so firstly, we put this policy in place in August of 2020. It was largely a response to the pandemic when we had event size restrictions. And we found that the policy ban worked, that we had a big reduction in the number of parties that were happening on Airbnb. We found that over the last year, 46% of all parties on Airbnb were decreased across Canada, and so we decided to make this part of our policy and to codify it. So now that's officially policy for Airbnb.
Matt, what constitutes like an acceptable party, and what is crossing the line?
So it is a bit of a gray area, of course. What one person considers to be a party is very different than what someone else would be considered a party. And at the end of the day, we consider it, a nuisance in the neighborhood, excessive noise, excessive trash, elements like that. And so our customer service team would work with hosts to identify what is and is not a party.
All right, but let me ask the question, because I guess if we can't quantify it, what prevents anyone from renting a place on Airbnb and then going out and inviting however many people they have? What happens to them if they get found out? Are they responsible for the damage? Are they barred from Airbnb for life? How does it work?
So we have strict policies in place. If someone does go ahead and has a party, what would happen is it could range from anywhere from a temporary ban to an outright ban on the platform. So if you were to throw a party, there would be consequences for that. To answer your question on if there was any damage to the property, we have coverage for that. We've had that in place for quite a while for hosts. So they are definitely covered in the event of any damage to the property, whether it's through a party or from someone accidentally knocking over a vase for nothing.
So that's through insurance at Airbnb, which you get if you're one of the people who puts a place up on the site.
That's right. So we have what's called air cover, and air cover covers them for up to $1 million in insurance.
Okay.
I'm imagining this comes as a big relief to most hosts, but I'm thinking there's probably some hosts who kind of viewed their apartment as a party palace per se. Has there been any pushback from hosts who aren't getting the same kind of business that they might have been getting before?
So we've banned party houses across the board for a while now. This is in lieu of that. So that's not allowed across the board on Airbnb. We want to ensure that any guest that comes into the neighborhood is treating the neighborhood very respectfully, like they would their own neighborhood. And we firmly believe that any neighborhood and community is just as important as the hosts and the guests on the platform. So it's a very important thing. This is something that we take very seriously. That we've been reviewing for a long time, and we're thrilled to have this codified now.
So there's no such thing as as a party place, like the people rent out and say this is perfect for large scale parties, and that would be okay to do. That doesn't exist.
That's right. That's banned on the platform 100%. And keep in mind, Airbnb is a platform that has about 1 billion or so bookings since we started about a decade ago. Mm-hmm. But the vast majority of people who come and stay in Airbnb, they're wonderful guests, and they respect the community. This is a policy we put in place as a check and balance to ensure that there are not any more parties on Airbnb. Okay.
So just a couple of quick questions. Number one, there have been beyond the party issue, which seems to be, at least it's being addressed now, and you said it has been for a while. There have been issues about people renting on Airbnb, seeing the pictures, place looks great, they get there, and it's nothing like the place they saw online. What happens then?
Well, there's a couple things that can happen. Contact customer service. We have a policy in place where if the listing is not up to par to what was advertised, then we'll help you find an additional place that is up to par to what you thought you booked the first time.
I have a question about if we hear lots of people who have Airbnbs like next door to them or in their and they're bothered by it, but they're not actual renters who can leave a bad review. What would someone in those circumstances do if they want to complain about how an Airbnb is being operated?
So in the event, say there's a party or there's a nuisance from someone who happens to be staying in an Airbnb in your neighborhood, we have a 24/7 neighborhood hotline that any neighbor or host is allowed to contact, and it connects them directly to a member of our support team, and they can then report there being a party or a nuisance or whatever it may be that's disrupting the neighborhood.
I will ask you one thing before we run out of time. We know, I mentioned off the top as well, governments here, I'm speaking specifically in Quebec, have had complaints. Natasha brought up one of the reasons there have been complaints in the past. Are you working with local governments to try to get over these hurdles?
Yeah, we are. And we do this across Canada. And we work with the municipalities and with provincial governments to ensure that there's fair and reasonable regulations across the board. At the end of the day, we believe in hosting very passionately. It's an additional source of income for so many hosts, and it's a source of income for small businesses in the community. If you look at every individual guest that comes into Canada or comes into a stay, they spend about $200 a day per day, and 50% of that spend is directly where their listing is. So there's an economic benefit to hosting. The key is to get regulations right, and that's what we do to work with municipalities and provincial governments.
All right,
good.
Well, listen, as I said, I'm sure a lot of people will be making use of Airbnb. I'm curious as well. Now that the pandemic's kind of easing off a little bit, have you seen business increase, decrease? Because I imagine you had a bit fall off in the past couple of years as well.
Yeah, no, we are seeing the business increase, especially in Canada. So keep in mind, we were a bit slower in terms of our travel rebound than what we saw in the States. Then what we're seeing now is that guests are staying longer. So no longer is it guests are coming for just a weekend or a week. We're finding that people are staying for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, up to 28 days or longer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 1 in 5 guests in Airbnb are doing that now. And that's the case in Canada as well. And the reason for that is we're untethered to the desk. We no longer necessarily have to work in offices all the time. So that sense of freedom means people are living and working everywhere, and it's pretty cool to see.
Interesting. Matt, thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me on.
Matt McNamara, Senior Communications Manager at Airbnb. So that's interesting, huh? People not a weekend, not a couple of days, sticking around longer than ever.
Yeah.